Reading passage 1. You should spend about 20 minutes on questions 1 to 13, which are based on reading passage 1 below. Research using twins. To biomedical researchers all over the world, twins offer a precious opportunity to untangle the influence of genes and the environment, of nature and nurture. Because identical twins come from a single fertilized egg that splits into two, and they share virtually the same genetic code. Any differences between them, one twin having younger looking skin, for example, must be due to environmental factors such as less time spent in the sun. Alternatively, by comparing the experiences of identical twins with those of fraternal twins who come from separate eggs and share on average half their DNA, researchers can quantify the extent to which our genes affect our lives. If identical twins are more similar to each other with respect to an ailment that fraternal twins are, then vulnerability to the disease must be rooted at least in part in heredity. These two lines of research studying the differences between identical twins to pinpoint the influence of environment and comparing identical twins with fraternal ones to measure the role of inheritance have been crucial into understanding the interplay of nature and nurture in determining our personalities, behavior, and vulnerability to disease. The idea of using twins to measure the influence of heredity dates back to 1875, when the English scientist Francis Galton first suggested the approach and coined the phrase nature and nurture. But the twin studies took a surprising twist in the 1980s with the arrival of studies into identical twins who had been separated at birth and reunited as adults. Over 2 decades, 137 sets of twins eventually visited Thomas Burckhart's lab in what became known as the Minnesota study of twins reared apart. Numerous tests were carried out on the twins, and they were each asked more than 15,000 questions. Burckhardt and his colleagues used this mountain of data to identify how far twins were affected by their genetic makeup. The key to their approach was a statistical concept called heritability. In broad terms, the uh, heritability of a trait measures the extent to which differences among members of a population can be explained by differences in their genetics. And wherever Bockhardt and other scientists looked, it seemed they found the invisible band of genetic influence helping to shape our lives. Lately, however, twin studies have helped um, lead scientists to a radical new conclusion that nature and nurture are not only elemental forces at work. According to a recent field called epigenetics, genetics, there is a third factor also in play, one that in some cases serves as a bridge between the environment and our genes, and in others operates on its own to shape who we are. And, genetic epigenetic processes are chemical reactions tied to neither nature nor nurture, but representing what researchers have called a third component. These reactions influence how our genetic code is expressed, how each gene is strengthened or weakened, even turned on or off to build our bones, brains, and all the other parts of our bodies. If you think of our DNA as an immense piano keyboard and our genes as the keys, each key symbolizing a segment of DNA responsible for a particular node or trait, and all the keys combining to make us who we are, then genetic processes determine when and how each key can be struck, changing the tune being played. One way in the study of epigenetics is revolutionizing our understanding of biology is by revealing a mechanism by which the environment directly impacts on genes. Studies of animals, for example, have shown that when a rat experiences stress during a pregnancy, it can cause epigenetic changes in a fetus that lead to behavioral problems as the rodent grows up. Other epigenetic processes appear to occur randomly while others are normal, such as those that guide embryonic, embryonic cells as they become heart, brain, or liver cells, for example. Genetics Geneticist Daniel Reed has worked with many twins over the years and thought deeply about what twin studies have taught us. It's very clear when you look at the twins that much of what they share is hardwired, she says. Many things about them are absolutely the same and unalterable, but it is also clear when you get to know them and that other things about them are different. Epigenetics is the origin of a lot of those differences, in my view. Reed credits Thomas Woodward's work for today's surge in twin studies. He was the trailblazer, she says. We forget that 50 years ago, things like heart disease were thought to be caused entirely by lifestyle. Schizophrenia was thought to be due to poor mothering. Twin studies have allowed us to be more reflective about what people are actually born with and what's caused by experience. Having said that, Reed adds the latest work in epigenetics promises to take our understanding ever further. What I like to say is that nature writes some things in pencil and some things in pen, she says. Things written in pen you can't change, that is DNA, but the things written in pencil you can. That's epigenetics. Now that we are actually able to look at the DNA and see where the pencil writings are, it is sort of a whole new world. Reading passages too. You should spend about 20 minutes on questions 14 to 26, which are based on reading passages 2 below. An introduction to film sound. Though we might think of films as an essentially visual experience, we really cannot afford to underestimate the importance of film sound. A meaningful sound track is often as complicated as the image on the screen and is ultimately just as much the responsibility of the director. The entire soundtrack consists of three essential ingredients: the human voice, sound effects, and music. These three tracks must be mixed and balanced so as to produce the necessary emphasis, which in turn create desired effects and toppings, which essentially refer to the three previously mentioned tracks are discussed below. They include dialogue, synchronous and asynchronous, as sound effects and music. Let us start with dialogue. As is the case with the stage drama, dialogue serves to tell the story and expresses feelings and motivations of characters as well. Often with film characterization, the audience perceives a little or no difference between the character and the actor. Thus, for example, the actor Humphrey Bogarts is the character Sam Spade, film personality, film personality and live personality seem to merge. Perhaps this is because the very texture of a performer's voice supplies an element of character. When voice textures fit the performer's psych physiognomy and gestures, a whole and a very realistic persona emerges. The viewer sees not an actor working at his craft, but another human being struggling with life. It is interesting to note that how dialogue is used and the very amount of dialogue used varies widely among films. For example, in the highly successful science fiction film 2001, little dialogue was evident, and most of it was banal and of a little intrinsic interest. In this way, the filmmaker was able to portray what Thomas Sobok, Sobokchuk, Sobchak and Vivian Sobchak call in an introduction to film and the inadequacy of human responses when compared with the magnificent technology created by man and the visual beauties of the universe. The comedy Bringing Up Baby, on the other hand, presents a practically non-stop dialogue delivered at breakneck speed. This use of dialogue underscores not only the dizzy quality of the character played by Catherine Hepburn, but also the absurdity of the film itself and thus its humor. The audience is bounced from gag to gag and conversation until conversation. There is no time for audience reflection. The audience is caught up in a whirlwind of activity and simply banting to follow the plot. This film presents pure escapism largely due to its frantic dialogue. Synchronous sound effects are those sounds which are synchronized or matched with what is viewed. For example, if the film portrays a character playing the piano, the sounds of the piano are projected. Synchronous sounds contribute to the realism of film and also help to create a particular atmosphere. For example, the click of a door being opened may simply serve to convince the audience that the image portrayed is real, and the audience may only subconsciously note the expected sound. However, if the click of an opening door is part of an ominous action, such as a burglary, the sound mixer may call attention to the click with an increase in volume, and this helps to engage the audience in a moment of suspense. Asynchronous sound effects, on the other hand, are not matched with the visible source of the sound on screen. Such sounds are included so as to provide an appropriate emotional nuance, and they may also add into the realism of the film. For example, a filmmaker might opt to include the background sound of an ambulance siren, while the foreground sound and the image portrays an arguing couple. The asynchronous ambulance siren underscores the psychic injury incurred in the argument. At the same time, the noise of the siren adds to the realism of the film by acknowledging the film's city setting. We are probably all familiar with background music in films, which has become so ubiquitous as to be noticeable in its absence. We are aware that it is used to add emotion and rhythm, usually not meant to be noticeable. It often provides a tone or an emotional attitude towards the story and or the characters depicted. In addition, background music often foreshadows a change in mood. For example, dissonant music may be used in film to indicate an approaching but not yet visible menace or disaster. Background music may aid viewer understanding by linking scenes. For example, a particular musical theme associated with an individual character or situation may be repeated at various points in a film in order to remind the audience of salient motifs or ideas. Film sound companies Film sound comprises conventions and innovations. We have come to expect an acceleration of music during car chases and creaky doors in horror films. Yet it is important to note as well that sound is often brilliantly conceived. The effects of sound are often largely subtle and often are noted by only our subconscious minds. We need to foster an awareness of film sound as well as film space so as to truly appreciate an art from that sprang to life, art form and that sprang to life during the 20th century, the modern film. Reading passage 3, you should spend about 20 minutes on questions 27 to 40, which are based on reading passage 3 on the following pages. This marvelous invention Of all mankind's manifold creations, language must take pride of place. Other inventions, the wheel, agriculture, sliced bread, may have transformed our material existence, but the advent of language is what made us human. Compared to language, all other inventions pale in significance since everything we have ever achieved depends on language and originates from it. Without language, we could never have embarked on our ascent and to unparalleled power over all other animals and even over nature itself. But language is foremost not just because it came first in its own right. It is a tool of extraordinary sophistication, yet based on an idea of indigenous simplicity. This marvelous invention of composing out of 25 or 30 sounds that infinite variety of expressions which, whilst having in themselves no likeness to what is in our mind, allow us to disclose to others its whole secret and make known to those who cannot penetrate um, penetrate it all that we imagine and all the various stirrings of our soul. This was how, in 1660, the renowned French grammarians of the Port Royal Abbey near Versailles distilled the essence of language, and no one since has celebrated more eloquently in the magnitude of its achievement. Even so, there is just one flaw in all these hymns of praise for the homage to language's unique accomplishment conceals a simple yet critical incongruity. Language is mankind's greatest invention, except of course that it was never invented. This apparent paradox is at the core of our fascination with language, and it holds many of its secrets. Language often seems so skillfully drafted that one can hardly imagine it as anything other than the perfected handiwork of a master craftsman. How else, how else could this instrument make so much out of barely 3 dozen measly morsels of sound? In themselves, these configurations of mouth, p, p, f, b, v, t, d, k, g, sh, e, and so on, amount to nothing more than a few haphazard spits and splutters, random noises with no meaning, no ability to express, no power to explain, but run them through the cogs and wheels of the language machine, let it arrange them in some very special orders, and there is nothing that these meanings, uh, streams of air cannot do, from sighing the interminable boredom of existence to unraveling the fundamental order of the universe. The most extraordinary thing about language, however, is that one doesn't have to be a genius and to set its wheels in motion. The language machine allows just about everybody, from pre-modern foragers in the subtropical savanna to postmodern philosophers in the suburban sprawl to lie these meaningless sounds together into an infinite variety of subtle senses, and all apparently without the slightest extension, yet it is precisely this deceptive case which makes a language a victim of its own success, since since in everyday life its times are usually taken for granted. The wheels of language run so smoothly that one rarely bothers to stop and think about all the resourcefulness and expertise and that must have gone into making it tick. Language conceals art. Often it is only in the estrangement of foreign tongues with their many exotic and outlandish features that brings home the wonder of language's design. One of the showiest stunts that some languages can pull off is an ability to build up words of breathtaking length and thus express in one word that English takes a whole sentence to say. The Turkish word "şeriliş", "şeriliş", "til", "tilimedelikle", "rimiz", "deniz", and then "siniz". To take the only example means nothing less than you are one of those whom we can't turn into a town dweller. In case you were wondering, this monstrosity really is one word, not merely many different words squashed together. Most of its components cannot even stand up on their own. And if that sounds like someone off freak, then consider Sumerian, the language spoken on the banks of the Euphrates some 5,000 years ago by the people who invented writing and thus enabled the documentation of history. A Sumerian word like Munin and Tuma, Munin Tuma, when he had made it suitable for her, it might seem rather trim compared to the Turkish colors Colossus above. What is so impressive about it, however, is not its lengthiness, but rather the reverse, the thrifty compactness of its construction. The word is made up of different slots, each corresponding to a particular portion of meaning. This sleek design allows a single sound to convey useful information, and in fact, even in the absence of a sound has been enlisted to express something specific. If you were to ask which bit in the Sumerian word corresponds to the noun, it in the English translation, when he had made it suitable for her, then the answer would have to be nothing. Mind you, a very particular kind of nothing. The nothing that stands in the empty slot in the middle. The technology is so fine tuned then that even a non-sound, when carefully placed in a particular position, has been invested with the specific function. Who would possibly have come up with such a nifty contraption?